Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Green Team meeting for the town of Bladensburg for Tuesday, January 14th, 2025. I just wanted to, pretty much go around the room. Today is going to be, we've got our partners here from, what can I think of? So I was like, you're not NIPWIF, you're from the NDC, Neighborhood Design Center. Thank you. I'm getting my brain is and from the urban forestry in regards to a tree maintenance program and our tree canopy survey that was recently done. This would present the tree canopy report was sent to the council yesterday night and it was presented. But today at the Green Team, we're going to talk more about the maintenance. So we have our public works team here. So I thought it would be good if everybody can kind of just kind of say your names. Go ahead and sit next to me or sit out and everything will be fine. We'll get some more chairs, but that we can introduce everybody's name. I'll let the neighborhood design start first, and then we'll go around the table and then we'll do everybody online. Does that make sense for everybody online?
That's
fine.
Okay, good. All right.
Perfect. Well, I'll go ahead and start. Hi, everyone. My name is Michaela Atta. I am the project coordinator for this project, and I'm a landscape designer at the Neighborhood Design Center.
I'm Colin Breidenbach, forestry program manager at Neighborhood Design Center. And I merely work on the field work and inventory side of this project.
My name is Catherine Love. I also worked with Colin on the ground inventory, and I'm the urban forestry technician at NDC.
Conrad Watson, I work at the public work department.
Renee Hall, Public Works.
Ronald Austin Jr., Public Works Department.
Hi, I'm Michelle Bailey Hedgepeth, town administrator.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ray Jeffries. I'm the marketing specialist for the town of Bladensburg and also a member of the Green Team.
Ms. Alan Fuentes, Public Work.
I'm Public Works.
Kelly Suji, Public Works.
Gavino, Public Works.
Eric Watson, Public Works.
Okay. Ms. Kinkle, do you want to start first? Oops, you're on.
You're on mute.
Participants, you can unmute it. See.
Lois, you need to unmute your microphone. We can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I'm Lois Kinkle, a longtime Bladensburg resident and always interested in Green Team projects.
Councilwoman.
I'm Councilmember Carol McBride, and a member of the Green Team.
And
Right.
Steve White's been in Bladensburg for 50 years, interested in the trees.
Great, and the Fireflies is not a person, so it's a note taker, so they won't be introducing themselves. I want to let Michaela start to kick this off, and then Colin and Catherine kind of talk about the training that we're doing. Oh, and we've got Regine Watson also here from the town. She's our town clerk. She's also here today. Okay, so I'll let you guys kick it off, and then we will put everybody on. Yeah. I think everybody can see this. Can everybody start to see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, it's yours.
Well, awesome. Thank you for joining us today, guys. So as Michelle was saying, we worked on a project for tree surveys in the municipality right of way, and we looked at species, health conditions, kind of a big picture look at the conditions of the canopy, the street tree canopy here in Bladensburg. And part of this project is also doing some educational components, and so maintenance training. We wanted to talk with Public Works and the Green Team about some of the basics to installation, maintenance, and health checks, and really kind of dive into taking care of the canopy and moving the canopy forward. And so we'll go to the next slide, which is our titles and introductions that we've already we already know each other now, and so this is the agenda. We'll talk through from the installation of a tree all the way down to checking its health status once it's already in the ground. And then we'll do some tree talk points in case you all have conversations on the street with other residents. And so with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Colin and Catherine to take us through the training.
Yeah, so I'll start out with just kind of the basics for installing a tree. Some of the main criteria you're going to want to look for when choosing the right tree for the correct location is the presence or lack of wires, utility, overhead utility wires. That'll kind of help you narrow down your tree species, large or small, that sort of thing. Amount of planting space, similar thing. You don't want to do a large tree in a very narrow, spot. And then full sun or full shade. We were talking about earlier, different trees have different requirements for the amount of sun or shade they like. So you just want to make sure you get the right tree in so they can thrive in those conditions. Next, we'll talk about the mulching aspect for when the tree is planted. So these are some images of how you kind of want to mulch. On the left is what you want to avoid is stacking that mulch up, piling it up against the trunk like that. That can be bad. That can introduce too much moisture and later bacteria, fungus, that sort of thing. So you want to keep that mulch kind of spaced out from the trunk. And that'll ensure you also use less mulch, so it's more economical too. Next, we'll talk about staking and hardware for installing a tree. So staking and hardware generally should come when the tree is planted. All you need is some 2 wooden stakes, some wires, and some rubber on the end of each wire so it doesn't cut into the tree. This will help keep it upright in its early kind of stages of life, so it doesn't flop over. Staking and hardware generally should come off around the 1-year mark, but this can kind of depend on the size and species of the tree. Also, deer guards can be helpful too. That's kind of a protection for the trunk. So if there's trees in a wooded area, deer typically they'll sometimes eat them, but also they'll rub their antlers, and that can definitely stress a young tree out. So
Colin, how long is it that deer start, do they stop at like year 2 or 3?
they'll do it. They prefer actually trees that are some younger
Okay.
and smaller.
That's a personal question, because I have a bunch of deer that are eating
Yeah.
my fruit trees every year, and I have a thing, so I was asking that question.
Mhm.
I mean, we have a deer fencing all around them until they get like 2 or 3 years old. I'm hoping they'll stop
Yeah.
at 3 years
And
old.
that's when they'll get sturdier too and not be quite as affected. But yeah, that can definitely be a nuisance.
Hi, May Colin. This is also, this can be very conversational too. So if there are other questions that do come up in the middle of the presentation, feel free to shout them out. We're here to kind of learn together.
When you were going back, so I have a question, going back a page for when you're talking about, I know I see a bunch of mulch volcanoes sometimes, and I know that we've been moving away from it. Yeah, so I was like, so go ahead. Yeah, I was gonna tell you that. I was gonna say, yeah, I was gonna let you two talk about it too.
Okay, well, I understand the proper mulching when you first put a tree in. The way we really do it is we have an auger that's attached to the bobcat. So it basically makes a foundation itself when you pull the auger back out. It's deep down and everything. So we just go around the base of the tree. The dirt. The dirt is already formed when you pull our auger out. That's what you're talking. Now, on this volcano mulch right here, we have some aging trees around the town and especially right back here. What would you do because the roots are so spread out and all this? How would you really properly mulch those?
Same way, really.
Same way, yeah. Typically, when a tree gets to be really matured, mulching is a little less important.
Right,
It's most important for those young ones because it'll protect the roots and trap in extra moisture for the roots. But yeah, I would say the same way if you want to continue to mulch larger trees. Yeah.
So keep it low and around and not, because in some ways, and pile it on, and then do the pile, if you did want to create a circle, is that what you guys?
Yeah, like a
suggest?
donut.
A donut around it, yeah.
We just call it soup cut. Soup cut. That's what we call, you know.
Yes,
so,
that makes sense.
so-
Yeah.
But, yeah, I get that, but that was my main question about if there's, the tree trunk is so big sometimes the way you can't get that soup cut really in there.
That is, I think that's usually more of an aesthetic preference for people, not so much, it's not needed for the tree at that point. People sometimes
Right.
just like to
Okay.
see mulch on their
Okay.
tree.
Right.
And in that case, yeah, you wanna make probably just a bigger donut.
Okay.
So like in the ones in the back, because some of those are so mature, I don't think we need mulch anymore. That's what
No.
you're basically saying. At that point, we don't need to mulch them. We could just let that go.
Roots are just coming all up.
Yeah, we're coming up anyways. These are like.
You try to
super
put
mature.
less on it, then you see the root, you know, so that's why we kind of try to build up a little bit so you couldn't
Yeah.
see the root, you know. You know,
Makes sense.
that's what we was coming, I mean, that's the problem that we was getting into some older trees.
Yeah.
I got you.
That's all right. I just I wanted to go back to that one because I was like, yeah, it's a good picture for everybody to kind of see. Thank
Yeah,
you.
for sure.
Sorry.
No.
No, that's good,
No,
yeah.
those are fine, too.
Yeah, any questions that come up, yeah, we can get to them right away. Yeah, so I guess, and then watering is the last kind of bit. Watering, obviously, it's most important in the summer. Those are really hot, dry months. So if you have watering capabilities, that's really important those time of months. Also, when the tree gets installed, it's gonna be a little stressed. So watering as soon as the tree goes in the ground is gonna help it kind of settle in and help those roots expand right away.
How long do you particularly water young saplings? When you first put it, how long is this? I mean, I've heard so many different type of ways to do it.
Yeah, I mean, kind of just a couple minutes, you can let the hose go, as much as you can really, but, yeah, you don't want to overwater. So, a couple minutes, give it a good soak, but,
Now, the gator bags, are those good for beginner trees?
yeah, those are good if you can get them, if you can keep them refilled.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, those are definitely good.
Okay.
So that you don't have to have quite a set of a schedule for watering.
Right.
That slow release.
How frequently do they have to go back and water? Use that.
Usually in those hot summer months, maybe once a week. Yeah, if you give it a good couple minutes soak, once a week or so. But I mean, if you're getting good rain then you don't have to worry quite as much.
Yeah, cause see, last summer when we planted them 50 trees in there and it was so hot. Once a week didn't really,
Wasn't cutting it.
right, wouldn't face them, so
Yeah.
we was doing about every other day and.
Twice a week.
Yeah.
Twice a week, yeah.
Doing like 3 times a week, yeah, possible, cause it's too hot. Yeah.
This past summer was especially dry and hot. So yeah, 2 weeks or twice a week might be the best kind of protocol there.
For a year.
Yeah, for at least it's like first 2 years. After that, it starts to settle in. It starts to adapt a little bit more to the soil.
Right.
So it's less of a need, but it's still helpful, if you have the capability to. Mhm. All right, next we're kind of get into pruning. So this is kind of your basic pruning of a young tree. So we'll talk about the different pruning cuts, kind of how you utilize them and different scenarios when you use each pruning cut. So the first you see in the bottom right is the removal cut. That removes a branch back to its parent trunk. That's typically done if the branch is dead. You just want to get the whole branch off of there, not leaving too much of a stub. And we'll get into that later too. Reduction cut. This removes a larger branch back to a smaller diameter side branch. See that on the left side there. And then a heading cut right up top in the middle. That's selectively removing a portion of a branch or trunk so that buds directly will develop into branches. This is kind of the least common of the three and really most appropriate for when you're restoring a tree after some storm damage. So it's really not preferable for the health of the tree, only if there's some sort of damage there. Then obviously you want to clean that up.
And that's just only on the head cut, right?
That's just a heading cut. Yeah, the other ones are going to be a bit more routine for dead branches and such. Next slide, we'll talk about kind of how to prune and what not to do. So when a pruning cut is performed correctly, you'll see wound wood develop and seal over the cut to heal and protect the tree. So you see that in the top right image. You can see that bark start to form back over where there was a cut, and that'll protect the tree from bacteria, disease, fungus that could enter through a fresh wound. A flush cut is what you see on the bottom. That is performed too close to the branch. So that can kind of compromise the defense zone of the tree and make it a lot more susceptible to disease. So when you're pruning, you want to leave just a little bit of a stub on those branches, but not too much so that there's, dead branch on there, and not too little so that it can't heal over.
So is that about 2 inch?
About maybe a little less than an inch. A little less than an inch, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
half
so,
inch.
so you wouldn't want to, maybe you wouldn't want to cut into the main trunk of the tree,
Mhm.
just kind of right outside of it.
Oh.
Yeah,
There's a diagram of that on, I think, the next slide.
yeah, that's right. This next slide will give you a little bit about branch anatomy and kind of want to, where those red lines represent where you want to aim those cuts for on the branch. The branch collar is what you want to leave intact. That's where the defense mechanism is gonna kick in. And then you also want to ensure you're removing the entirety of the dead branch. Next, we're gonna kind of talk about how to spot dieback within the crown. So you can see a couple images here. That top end image, it's clearly not as vigorous, so that can kind of tell you that there might be some sort of disease or optimization going on with the tree. So, it's easy to tell in the summer. You can kind of just look for lack of leaves, lack of vigor in the canopy. And you can also see some discolorment of the branches. Sometimes they'll be, white or orange with fungus, and that can represent, also a dead branch. Yeah, but obviously any branch that has healthy green leaves, then that's a healthy branch. That's good to go. Next slide, young trees and codominance. So codominant stem, that's when two or more of the main stems of the tree get about the same diameter or growing from the same location. So you can see a young example on the left there. That can you want to kind of treat that early so that it doesn't turn into, on the right here, you see a much larger tree, it has that big crack down the middle. So that can make the tree a lot less structurally stable, more susceptible to breaking off, falling over as it gets older. So it's super important to get to that when it's young like that.
So what do you do when it's young? I mean, I think I already know, but I want to really hear.
So you kind of you look for, you have to choose the branch that you want to keep to be the main leader. So with that, I look for size, overall vigor, and then kind of upright form. So if there's a branch jutting out a little to the left or right, and maybe it's not as healthy looking, that'll typically be the one you clip off. And then that other one that you choose to be the main leader will kind of center out and take form. But yeah, super good to get that early before it gets worse, and a lot cheaper. If it's early, you can get to it with some basic equipment. Whereas it gets a lot bigger, you might need a chainsaw or something else involved. So yeah. And obviously the example on the right there is in the woods. So in that case, you wouldn't have to worry about it as much. But obviously, we're talking about trees, in the town. So that's when it's kind of most important to take care of.
And this is really only on the trees that get very large, right? Not the smaller species.
And there are some smaller species that are going to have, they're going to be multi-stem, like crepe myrtles. That's like normal. They're kind of supposed to be like that. Sweet bay magnolia. There's a few others, but primarily your larger trees, they're supposed to be, just straight up kind of one pole, one trunk. Next, we'll talk about sidewalk clearance. Something just for the pedestrians, it's not have to duck or get hit in the face with branches. So you want to be conscious of the clearance for pedestrians. as well as larger vehicles, buses, delivery trucks, things like that. They can, you know, if a tree on the street, if the branches are too low on the street side, they can kind of hit those branches and that can cause some damage, cause some wounds and stuff for those larger branches. So you just want to make sure those are elevated high enough that, you know, people can walk by on the sidewalk side and then trucks and stuff can get under without compromising the tree anymore. And then last slide from me here, we're going to talk about just the basic tools needed for this maintenance I talked about. Yeah, so you guys are probably familiar with all these, you know, this is pretty much all you need for, especially for young trees. As trees start to get bigger, branches start to get bigger, you might need chainsaws, pole saws, things like that. But yeah, for young tree maintenance, this is really all you need. Loppers, they can kind of handle those, you know, diameter branches, like, you know, not too big. Hand saws, the branches that might be slightly bigger. And then hand pruners, just for those really small skinny ones that are easy to get to. Okay, now I'll turn it over to Catherine and she'll finish us out here.
Awesome. Yeah, so you guys will have access to the data that we collected on the tree inventory. Really for Public Works, this will just be on the planning side, possibly. You'll be able to use it for some interaction with the community as well if they have questions. Yeah, so that data is going to be valuable for constructing maintenance plans. The trees can be tracked according to their health status, their size, their risk factors, if any look like they're posing any kind of hazard to the community. And then maintenance notes can be added for individual trees as well as you go along. Do you know what kind of like platform people view that through generally, Michaela?
Yeah, so we'll be providing the GIS data to the municipality. We'll also have, well, so you'll have those data points to manipulate if you have our GIS, but I think municipalities might have access to like a free version. I will have to email our friends at Colmar Manor because Greg over there is using it as a tool. And so I think that that program is accessible for free through the county to our municipalities. Yeah. And so you can read it on there, you can move things around and put points down on there. But we'll also provide PDF maps of the current canopy data points and viable new locations. And you'll get an Excel sheet too that has all of the individual trees, their species, where they are, their risk status, their maintenance needs, all of the information that we collected. You'll have a few different formats to look at that and utilize.
Yeah, and then for the, you know, people involved more in planning, the tree data can also be used for additional funding regarding the street trees as well.
Question, do y'all have any soil samples on these locations where you wanna put a lot of these trees? I've seen the map, do y'all have soil samples?
No,
Places that you wanna put to know what type of species can go in there, not just because of the sunlight or anything, but as far as, you know, growth of it in the ground.
yeah, and so no, we didn't collect any of that kind of data. You know, if ever there is the capacity to do such a thing, it probably wouldn't hurt to do that at a few sites, especially if there's like a couple species that you might have in mind.
Cause like 58th Avenue is probably where y'all got most of your trees going to. And I know we had a little problem with dogwoods right in that little area too. So I didn't know if y'all had already did a soil sample.
It's good to know there. I mean, like it, dogwoods aren't gonna be tolerant to a variety of things, and that could be, again, you know, like in winter, they're gonna get blasted with salt residue.
Sure.
It could be the amount of sunlight they're receiving, which is a pretty huge amount compared to where they are found in their natural habitat.
Right.
And then, yeah, it could, again, also be the soil. So it could be a combination of factors. Yeah, I mean, I think like you bring up a good point. If you ever did want to do any soil testing, you could at least, you know, determine the pH there.
Yeah, and if not, you can always kind of default to just hardier trees in general, which is pretty easy to access, you know, like example, like American elm. It's
Right.
gonna be able to deal with a lot more conditions, red maples, river birch, things like that. They'll just be able to adapt to any soil. Um, So yeah, it's always a default if you can't get a soil sample.
And one actually website that we really like to use just to check out the conditions that trees prefer is the North Carolina Extension Toolbox. Is that the right name of it?
I think so, yeah.
It kind of gives you an overview of the species and their preferences.
And I think that site also gives you companion plant species, other species that would work well with the one that you're looking at. Right?
I haven't used it for that, but probably.
I know that we're talking mostly about trees, street trees, but do you have any suggestions, for areas other, like, cause you know, we have some like, I wanna say the rain gardens and public parks and things like, yeah.
All the trees that we don't really have we don't have a problem with any trees that go in any of our parks right at the moment. But we do, y'all have a map already out with, I didn't see, I'm not for sure if I seen any in the parks. I know y'all was concentrating on big, longer stretches, you know.
Yeah, I think we inventoried a few of them in those pocket parks there.
Okay.
Yeah, and those were great trees that
Right.
you guys selected there. And generally a tree in a park is gonna do better because it's got more, the roots have more room to grow and spread out. So it's gonna be a lot less stress than like when they're in the box. So yeah, that's where you can utilize like oaks, bigger trees like that, that need a lot more growing space.
Move on to the next one. And this is a good place if any like questions come up in general. Just doing a brief overview of some things to check for in the tree's health status. But these are all kind of, common sense things to look for. Water stress and either trunk damage from deer, mower, or cars are gonna be some of the things that will affect these trees the most. So you guys already have a watering plan in place, that's great. Sounds like you water, well, it actually sounds like you guys water way more than our program ever plans for.
We did. Yeah. This one, we didn't know what to do because of the time and how hot it was.
Mhm.
So we just, we was using, what, 600 gallons? No, more than that, a day. Was it three?
Yes, like
Three.
time we fill up that.
That's 900 gallons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, that's more than the county uses for sure, so, I would think your trees would at least be doing pretty well on water.
Are Willingham coming back out with some of theirs, or cause they're supposed to do the maintenance for 2 years?
Yeah, they were doing.
They were doing theirs too, yeah, they're still on the, yeah,
Never missed with something.
That's from Joe's,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Another thing we'll see in the county a lot is trunk damage from mowers or cars. And if you have any trees that tend to get hit by those more, it's a good idea to put a trunk guard on those if you can. Things you want to look for, and especially on more mature trees, to look for declining tree health. Fungal growth is usually pretty easy to see. You'll see, kind of entire branches with some orange fungus growing on the bottom side, and you'll know that that trunk is probably on the decline and a good idea to get rid of it. Broader cavities at the base of the trunk, you want to, try to determine whether there's any hollowness happening inside of there. Thin canopy, not always a sign that the tree is dying, but it might be a good idea to get rid of some of those dead branches. I was going to talk briefly about epicormic growth on trees. This is what we call like water sprouts or stress sprouting. This kind of sprouting doesn't always mean that a tree is going to be critically stressed. A lot of times, these images don't translate well to the big screen. I'm sorry about that. But water sprouts growing out of like a large pruning wound can just be an indication that the pruning wasn't performed correctly. Generally nothing really to worry about. You
Did you mute?
We can't hear you.
People.
Yeah,
Sorry, but I don't know what happened.
but it was recording. We may have to back up a bit.
Okay. So let me know when.
It's
I was
recording.
still
It's
recording.
just still recording. It didn't stop, yeah.
Okay. So we were just talking briefly about what's called epicormic growth or water sprouts. Again, this can be as simple as just giving you an indicator that a pruning wasn't performed correctly, or it can indicate a larger underlying health issue. So generally sprouting from the base, the roots, or along the entire trunk of the tree are going to be signs that the tree is either suffering from something like water stress, not enough water, or could indicate like a larger systemic infection or infestation of either fungus or insects. So again, like try to give another extra look at those trees that seem to be sprouting all over from their base. Some trees will do this naturally, again, like the crepe myrtle, the sweetbag magnolia. These are all, yeah, service berries. These are all trees that really want to be multi-stemmed naturally. So, you know, sprouting from the base of those is, you know, not going to indicate a health problem. It's just the way the tree wants to be for the most part. If those are getting in the way of, you know, sidewalk clearance, then obviously they'll just need to be knocked back routinely.
So you bring one of those limbs all the way down to the ground, basically, but they don't have a trunk. Is that correct? How you prune them?
Yeah, so yeah, generally if it's especially like, you know, gonna hit people as they're walking along the sidewalk or if they're gonna hit cars, you know, if you have a big, like hefty growth, just knocking that limb back all the way into the base. However, you do want to be careful with a lot of trees that you're not taking out too much canopy all at once. I think the general recommendation is not taking off more than 25% of the foliage in any given growing season. So that's kind of the absolute upper limit. And then I just had some other considerations to think of. So maintenance is gonna change as the tree matures. You know, mature trees, a lot of people instantly think of sidewalk damage that is gonna come along with those, which I'm sure you guys deal with a lot. What is your usual, do you ever do any like shaving of the concrete or?
Basically, we don't do a lot of the shading because we replace the section.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that'll come with probably like root shaving or root removal as well. Yeah, so just some considerations. If you guys like feel like you have the option, anytime you're cutting into a root or shaving the root, it is gonna compromise the health of the tree. If you feel like the lift is minimal enough, you could try methods such as shaving the concrete down so that the edges meet, or using a pavement replacer such as asphalt, which is a bit more naturally flexible. Asphalt can be painted over to be essentially matching color of the concrete. But that'll, you know, give you a little more options so that you're not compromising the health of the tree and you're able to keep your sidewalk level as well.
Question, is there any trees, now when you plant against the right of way, is there any trees, I know it might be a crazy question, but most of the roots go down instead of out? I mean, like first couple of years or something, maybe go 3 feet down or 4 feet down, then spread out?
So some of them do have longer tap roots, and at least from my own research, the trees that put down a long tap root are going to be the ones that have a deeper rooting habit. I think with any large tree over time, you are going to get probably some
Yeah, you,
root growth.
right.
But the ones that are like very much known for causing sidewalk lift are gonna be, red maples, which grow pretty fast, but they also put out a lot of lateral roots as well. So you'll get a lot of complaints about those, and then those trees also, do not do well with sidewalk replacements either, so. Red maples, when they get in the way of the sidewalk, often, you know, the roots will get shaved, they'll get, removed, and then you'll also have a dead tree to deal with down the line as well. So yeah, I mean, you know, if you're considering planting red maples, it might be a good idea to avoid doing those in the smaller strips.
Right.
And focus, yeah, exactly. Because they are fabulous trees. They,
Pretty.
yeah, they're pretty, they last a long time, but they do not do well with sidewalk maintenance.
Sensitive.
Yeah. And again, large mature trees are an enormous asset to the community, so, you know, we do want to emphasize, keeping their health intact as much as possible, and, you know, perhaps making compromises in the sidewalk tree complex.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So say for instance, they try to plant a tree like in front of your house or whatever. Like, you know, the little strip right in front of your house where there's a little bit of grass, where you know is out in front of your yard, but you got a bunch of power lines. Is it safe to put the tree right there?
we would suggest only putting smaller species in those spots.
Oh.
So trees that are gonna reach, a mature height of over, about 30 feet. We don't generally recommend that those species go under power lines.
That's why I told them I don't want it, cause I'm
Yeah.
underneath all the power lines.
Yeah, so in those cases, we would definitely recommend a smaller, and perhaps ornamental species. You know, like we were mentioning earlier, cherries are good choices for that, or native, flowering species as
Or you
well.
better off just don't put one at all.
Yeah, and sometimes people, really push for that.
Oh, that's why I pushed and they did it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's good when those, you know, solutions can get worked out and when a homeowner like feels like they have a say in that as well.
Perfect, that's it.
Um,
Appreciate it.
yeah, for sure. Just one more, little sidewalk piece, sometimes, what's called a meander is a negotiable, in an area where you'll have a little bit of a thinner sidewalk placed so that the tree has a little bit more room to go. Again,
Now, I'm sorry to cut you off. Now, who can approve that right there?
so, sometimes that will have to be negotiated with a homeowner. It is not always going to be wanted or accepted, but there are, you know, in our experience with right tree, right place, sometimes homeowners do want to see a tree
They don't wanna.
that is, large, thriving. They want to see that tree kept if possible,
Right,
and they will be amenable occasionally to, a little bit of sidewalk going up onto their property to create a meander.
Yeah, cause I mean, you're not ADA compliant.
They come and they decide.
So how would you?
Probably not. In that case, yeah, the sidewalk would have to probably bump out a little bit more onto the homeowner property. And again, it's not always gonna be realistic. It's not gonna be something that can be done, but, there are cases where people will,
Approve it for you to.
yeah,
come on their
choose to see
property.
the tree,
Yeah.
live.
Right.
Especially if they're like really invested in it, shading an area, keeping their house cool. I think that's kind of all I had for some considerations. Was there any other questions on like tree health in general?
Yeah, I've heard some of the tree roots can get into the water pipes from the house. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, we always make sure that we space out at least 8 to 10 feet from those, underground utility lines that are marked. Generally they'll kind of stay out of the way, because those are very deep. But just to be safe, 8 to 10 feet is kind of the rule of thumb there, not to plant over one or within that range.
Yeah. And I saw a list of some fruit trees. I'm wondering, is there actual fruit coming, dropping onto the ground? Because that could be a problem if you have fruit trees with fruit, on the ground not being picked up.
Yeah, generally, all the trees that we plant for our program or would recommend, is not fruiting, or if it does have fruit, it's very small. You're not dealing with, yeah, like big apples, peaches, anything like that.
Berries and stuff. Berries.
Yeah. Yeah, small kind of seeded berries and stuff. But yeah, nothing major that's gonna, really get in the way. Draw too much wildlife.
And if there aren't any more questions on the maintenance part, the last section that we wanted to leave you all with were talking points. And so I imagine, as you've been out in the field and maybe installing trees, you might run into some residents and there might be some conversation. Some people might not be interested in having a tree on their street because there's not enough space or it just seems a little dangerous. But if it is a situation where you feel you can advocate for planting a tree in that area, there are a few things that you can, talk out with the resident. And so the next couple of slides, we have the benefits that for people who were here or for the town meeting yesterday have heard some of these, but we're just going to do like a very quick go over. So the environmental benefits, I mean, it's improving air quality, it's capturing stormwater, it's building habitat for native pollinators and songbirds. These are things that, like we feel very confident in as far as benefits that trees provide, right? And so those are some talking points, but in the next slide, there's some kind of lesser known ones, or at least like less talked about ones. And so we have the trees being in the street planting strip help reduce street noise. They're a soft material between vehicles and people who are on the sidewalk or homes. And so that helps buffer some of that noise. And so it's more pleasant for homeowners. They help reduce street speeds or traffic speeds because of the frame. Like it makes the road look narrow when there's trees along the street. And so drivers will tend to slow down a little bit. And so then there's safety kind of brought up. And then trees, when they hit a mature height, they'll cast shade and cool the pedestrian areas. And so it's more pleasant to walk in your neighborhood with your kids or your dog. And then the presence of plants and nature also helps kind of restore like mental fatigue or mood or even lower blood pressure. And so those are just some other things that you can talk about if you end up having those conversations in the field. And then for the last couple of slides, we wanted to circle back to kind of safety because there is a little bit of a misconception sometimes where people feel like big trees, if allowed to be there, can, if someone with bad intentions maybe was out on the street, that could be like a place that they can hide behind, or it could create some kind of like veil for bad things to happen, right? But studies have shown that actually more tree dense areas have 52% fewer total crimes and 56% fewer violent crimes. And I'll explain a little bit of why that is in a second, but as far as like addressing the relevance of maintenance to that, that last bullet talks about how there's also less crime, specifically when branches are pruned up above the first floor windows. And so that has to do with visibility to the street. And so since there are more people able to look out onto the street, that has a kind of a community surveillance aspect to it. And so it makes communities a little bit safer. And so in the next slide, just to tie this safety misconception to the benefits we talked about in the previous ones. So like urban conditions, like higher temperatures on the street and high levels of noise have been linked to aggression and violence. But when you have trees there to kind of help lessen those two things, that has a positive impact. Trees in nature helping to restore mental fatigue also has an impact in how people, like maybe people's aggression too. And then outdoor spaces with trees or like more pleasant, like planting streetscapes are more consistently and often used. And so that's another layer of like community surveillance or like just more presence on the street that will encourage more safety there. And so that was a very quick overview of like some of the things that you can talk to your community members about when you're out in the field. And so I hope all like this information may be reinforcement of things you already know. You might have learned some interesting new things. But overall, I hope that this was helpful. And so we want to go ahead and open up the floor one more time if there's any more questions or if there's anything that anyone wants to discuss.
One question, last summer I had a plant and was watering it like 2 times a week and it just like get yellow a lot. So what caused that? The leaves and everything was.
Overwatering can also be, like, just as much as underwatering can affect a tree, overwatering can do it. And then aside from that, there's so many factors, that can be at play. I would say, like, actually, one of the signs of overwatering is yellowing leaves, so. Especially if you notice that they're getting a little, like, mushy.
More yellow, more than green.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, different plants will have different water requirements. Some need a lot more, some can kind of stay dry for a little bit.
You know, we have a lot of huge trees here. I guess they're oak trees. They go all the way across the street over the neighbor's house. So are we looking at more medium-sized trees and smaller trees to plant?
Yeah, I mean, that's up for the kind of the town to decide, but basically what we recommend is planting those large trees where there's space to accommodate a large tree. But spaces that are a little tighter, then kind of prioritize those smaller and medium trees that are appropriate for the street side. Yeah.
Yeah, because we have a lot of power lines here with trees. The branches grow into the tree, but Pepco will only trim the top branches on the electric lines. The rest of the branches are in the internet lines, and we can't seem to find anyone that'll trim them. You know, the utilities don't want to do it, but you know, that becomes a problem. And another question, I've heard that Pepco is supposed to trim the tree for the power line coming from the telephone pole all the way to your house. So if there's branches on the line, even though it's on your property, the power line coming to your house, have you heard that Pepco will trim that also?
I don't know enough about Pepco's practices when it comes to that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, for the sake of their, you know, power and communication. Yeah.
Okay.
What trees are more susceptible, I guess, for like allergies? Are elm trees bad? I mean, do they cause a problem?
Yeah, just about any tree could induce allergies. Generally, your largest trees will be the biggest culprits because they just have more buds to flower. But just about any tree will, yeah, in the spring, will induce allergies for a little bit.
I'll add to that too. I think, so a lot of plants can be divided between things that are wind pollinated versus things that are insect pollinated. The trees that are insect pollinated will be much less likely to cause allergies. So things with kind of like bigger, and I could be like, you know, sort of shooting myself in the foot with the native species push. But the ones with like shower, bigger flowers are generally going to be insect pollinated, and the ones with minuscule, kind of ambiguous flowers, those will generally be wind pollinated. There are wind pollinated species that are more likely to cause allergies, though, and those will be like your oaks and things like that.
Okay.
However, I think the biggest culprit of allergies generally is going to be grass or small growing plants like ragweed.
Oh yeah,
It's still coming up.
Yeah.
I definitely know about ragweed.
Yeah, but some people I think are particularly sensitive to oaks. Those will be an allergen.
Okay.
In the spring.
And which trees are best for the, that helps with the mental part?
I would say probably all of.
Oh, yeah,
all of them.
there's no species, like, specific thing, just the presence of nature, vegetation, greenery, in your community all has the potential to have that power, with the mental restoration.
Okay.
Yeah, you definitely don't want.
Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, you don't want to underestimate the large trees value for that as well.
Yeah.
So since they play such an important part in cooling.
The reason why I'm asking is because I live in a senior community. So I'm considering the residents, basically in this area of Bladensburg.
Anyone else have any other questions? I got a
We have
notification.
live training anytime soon, when you start planting these flowers, so. Live training, hands on.
Fortunately, that's not, the grant doesn't cover that one,
Okay.
but I mean, I can bring the idea to like our directors too, who would be super interested in
Okay.
collaborating again. And I think it would be a great kind of next step to this project that's already getting the ball rolling, you know?
I think we're doing an event, and oh my gosh, I got a 2 o'clock after this, but, we're doing an event for Earth Day, which is actually kind of rolls us into our next set of stuff, is that, that might be with all of the port towns. And so maybe Edmiston, and maybe
Yeah.
what we could do is, because what we did, like, Going Green with Pride, where they give us they give us like green materials, like trees and all that kind of stuff, so maybe, yeah, so maybe what we could do is maybe set it up, because we were gonna do one group meeting, one place, location. We thought about doing it at the waterfront park versus doing it all for
That day,
location.
right?
That day.
Right.
Yeah, so that maybe then staff could then come out and kind of, or the, and citizens could kind of come out and do some kind of a thing. So what we could do is maybe talk and see how that would work.
Yeah, that would feel like a very natural.
Yeah, like we're doing
project to do
Anacostia
together, too.
Watershed, because we do some of the stuff with them, like it would be, they could also help, because they do a lot of maintenance, so maybe we could see what we could do then. Just as a last item, just to kind of, because I gotta walk out in a minute, on January 20th is our MLK Day of Service at Bladensburg Waterfront Park, where we do where we actually do a lot of maintenance outside, so if anybody is interested, Ray will send out a copy of the flyer, but it's a day on, not a day off. But I think it's gonna be a little rainy, but not as cold from the forecast. So I'll be there on Monday. But you bring out your pruner, they have pruners and gloves, and people can volunteer right out there at Bladensburg Waterfront Park, and we cut back a lot of the, some of the things that are growing out, we do pruning. Actually, we actually do pruning and moving back some stuff out there. And there's usually about 40 or 50 people out there.
Y'all doing a lot of work on the malls, waterway.
Yeah, the march, stuff like that. So yeah, people get out there, so just bring your boots, but that's what we've got for today. Anything from the green team or anything else that you guys, how was this? We hope this was informative.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives me a better understanding of, what type of trees and what benefits they bring. So,
That's very interesting.
Okay,
and
thank
how
you.
you prune a tree.
And so thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. We're gonna end the green team. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and bye.
Okay,
Bye
have a
now.
good afternoon.
Uh,